So I'm supposed to introduce our guest speaker, which is my brother, and in your little handouts, it tells you a lot about who he is now and what he's going to be. But let me tell you a little bit about who he was in high school 4 years ago. I distinctly remember watching the videos of him being Steve Irwin as he chased Sasquatches with his best friend and sidekick Sparky. There was also the video of him and his best friend dancing in the pool to Lady Gaga. And during summertime, when he was not selling fireworks, he would have been terrorizing the local Walmart, taking pictures in their freezers, like with the door closed, taking pictures in the freezer. So he's very much a jokester, and he's very friendly and welcoming, and a very big part of my life. But he's also a very sweet, very kind man who also is very willing to give advice. He's always given me advice when I needed it, and he always somehow makes it funny. I don't know how he does that. There's also a memory of when I fell and I cut my knee, and my brother picked me up and carried me to the side and went inside to clean the gash that I had on my knee. And he bandaged it up, and that's probably one of my favorite memories because it showed how much he cared about me. And I'll never miss the times, or I'll never forget the times that we sang at the top of our voices in the car with the windows down. So, I mean, he's just a very awesome person. He always has great advice. And just 4 years ago, he was in our same spot. And so I just want to introduce our speaker, who's an amazing young man and godly young man, Nate Day.
Well, I have to say, I was not expecting any of that, so... Friends, parents, grandparents, siblings, welcome. In class of 2015, I give you congratulations, but now, in the ever-hallowed words of Keith Chadwick, it's my turn. My turn. May 22nd, 2011. It sounds cliche, but I was quite literally sitting in the same seats that you are. As I sat, fighting the constant urge to fall asleep, I sat and thought to myself important life questions, such as, are the taquitos at the reception going to be beef or chicken? What time do the Mavericks play? Or what time's my graduation party? And honestly, I don't know if you're going to quite remember what I say up here in probably about 2 hours, but hopefully some essence of what I say is able to stick with you today. And I know the tradition of commencement speeches. Typically, you'll have someone come up who wants to speak retrospectively, tell you all the interesting mistakes that they've made throughout their lives and career. Then they desire to communicate a deep message with you as all you move into your next stage of life. And I'm here to let you know that I intend to honor that tradition. You see, when I got a call from Mr. Chadwick about being the commencement speaker a while back, I was intrigued but also frightened, for you see, I've never worn a dress on stage before. I was very flattered though, because this is a time of year when educated professionals speak proficiently to up-and-coming classes about their career potential and how to navigate the adult world. And you guys get me. I was the kid in high school who received a lot of warnings for my hair being too long. I developed the nickname Sleepy from my consistent efforts to fall asleep in Mr. Parrish's history classes. Procrastination was a developed way of life. Extra credit wasn't seen as an opportunity, but a threat. Spark Notes was a necessity, and I thought getting a teacher to take the class outside was the best present that I got all year. I'll never forget that, Miss Hendershot. And now I'm freshly graduated with a Bachelor of Behavioral Science in Media Communication, which, in case you didn't know, is code for I don't quite know what I want to do with my life. And And I can't tell you how much fun it is to try and explain to people who don't know what media communication is. I've changed my major 3 times and still don't quite know what my future career outlook is, yet I'm responsible with tasking all of you for advice that you're supposed to carry into the future. So here goes. Graduates, today is about you, and this is your time. You've successfully navigated high school. Congratulations. Give yourself a pat on the back, a round of applause. You've graduated from a Christian college preparatory school that has given you extraordinary academic standards, taught you that wearing a belt is one of the most important things to double check before you leave the house, and that PB&Js are freely doled out for forgotten lunches. Well, get ready, because chances are many, if not all of you, are about to walk into a public liberal college atmosphere that will challenge everything you've ever learned or believed, including your PB&J consumption rate. And whether you like it or not, here at Bethesda, you've been creating, or painting, if you will. And I know some of you non-art-oriented people are looking at me and being like, painting? Have you seen me paint? But yes, you've all been painting a legacy, that is. Every one of you has been painting on the legacy that is the lasting effect of Bethesda Christian School. And some of you may have had a smaller piece of the canvas than others, but now the legacy that your class has been painting is finished. And this legacy is now torn off the easel and put on the wall in a nice 16 by 20 frame. And now, God has given each one of you a new canvas for whatever is next. However, you're all faced with the prompt of, how are you going to use that for His glory? Will you see it as more valuable to invest in school? Will you see it as more valuable to invest in future job opportunities? Or will you see it as more valuable to invest in others' lives, especially that for the sake of the gospel? We all do it in different ways. However, I'm not here to expand on small, simple instances, but I'm here to shed light on the monster that is life after high school by sharing a few key takeaways from one recent graduate to another. I'm sure all of you have been running through the endless questions such as, what do I want to major in? Where do I want to go to college? Where do I want to work? And of course, all these questions could be considered subheadings underneath the large overlying question that is, what do I want to do with my life? And you don't have to feel alone in asking this. In these last couple weeks of May, there are going to be approximately 3.2 million high school seniors across the United States graduating that are in your same shoes. And 2.2 million of those are going to be attending over 4,100 different colleges and universities across the entire country. And all of them are working through the same questions that you are. Today, though, I want to leave you with 3 major things that I think are important for all of you as you walk into your next chapter. There are obviously some practical or logical things I can tell you, like don't take notes on your laptop because Facebook is really tempting, or put your alarm clock on the other side of the room. You'll thank me when you show up to class on time. But getting those out of the way, let's dive into these 3 main topics. Number 1, don't be afraid to make decisions. Decisions don't have to be fearless, but don't sit where you are because you're afraid. Throughout the entire history of mankind, we see that children would simply follow their parents into whatever field they were already involved. Recently, though, there's been a drastic shift, especially over the course of the last 100 to 150 years. Now, we get the choice. We actually have to choose. And if you don't choose, then that's a choice not to choose. And it's a funny thing that freedom can be so intimidating. I'll never forget the first week of new student orientation at Hardin-Simmons. My university president told us the line, the greatest thing about college is the freedom, but the worst thing about college is the freedom. Freedom is so valuable, but we fear it, or we shrivel when we look at it. We stress over what major we are so that we can eventually stress over what job we'll have, so that we can eventually stress over how much money we'll have, so then we can finally stress over how to manage it. Follow your dreams, right? Well, not to damage your ideals or anything, but dreams are a little vague. In other words, dreams are a convoluted discombobulation used to make circumlocution or hyperbole a situational regularity, where you're consistently integrating sesquipedalian terminology. Thank you for within the You see, I remember when I was stuck in that train of thought, where I kept thinking of my dreams, but it seemed what was right in front of me was completely disguised. And I'll never forget, it was my junior year at Hardin-Simmons, and I'm on the phone with my dad. I was in an interesting predicament. We were discussing girls and school and life objectives, you know, the little things. And as I'm pacing back and forth discussing how my most recent relationship went down the tubes and whether I should change my major again for the third time, I was explaining how I wanted to wait and seek confirmation from the Lord in a direction before I walked that way when my dad laid this quote on me. He said, "Nate, God can't steer a parked ship. The only way he can guide you is if you're moving." And I kind of thought to myself, just imagine if instead of saying, "God, I'm not going to move until you show me where to go," we said, "God, I'm going to run in the direction that you've given me at this point until you show me I'm supposed to run in a different direction." Mm-hmm. And don't worry about being secure where you are, because true security isn't where we think it is. I was listening to a missionary from Haiti who had fled the country because he and his family were quite literally being hunted. He and his family had made it to America, and he desired to make a life for himself here. But within the first couple years in America, he felt a strong desire to go back to Haiti and to invest in the church in that country. Excuse me. And as he was explaining the process of how the Lord led him back to Haiti, he said this: "Security is not the absence of danger, but security is being in the center of the will of God." Your decisions about your future may be scary, but don't be scared to walk forward in them through prayer. And this brings me to my second point, which is prayer is essential to your relationship with God, but don't let prayer be as far as you go. Follow that prayer with faith-rooted action. As Christians, we commonly like to use the phrase, "I'll pray about it." And most of you know what I mean. Prayer is essential to our faith, and Paul repeatedly states in the New Testament that we are to pray without ceasing or pray with thanksgiving. However, sometimes we use prayer almost as an excuse to sit on our hands sometimes. We'll pray about it, but then that's it. There's no action behind it. Or if we don't get a clear sign from God about what to do or where to go, then we just say no. I've been guilty of this just as anybody else. And don't get me wrong, I really do believe prayer is crucial and necessary, and praying for wisdom and discernment is vital. And using discernment in the correct way can be one of the most important skills that we can hone as adults and future leaders. However, prayer and action are not separate. They coincide together. Joseph Solomon, who is a famous spoken word artist, is quoted as saying, "Prayer does not replace action, it encourages it." God has given us wisdom and capability to make decisions. So if it's a situation that we don't know about, we are called to walk forward in faith, not shrivel in uncertainty. You don't have to absolutely love what you do for that to be where your career is at. There's an excerpt from Kevin DeYoung's book called Just Do Something, and I love the way he words this, and it goes as follows. "We walk into the future in God-glorifying confidence, not because the future is known to us, but because it is known to God, and that's all we need to know." As long as you are truly seeking the Lord's will and direction, you can't be wrong. And if you are, He'll show you. Don't worry, He's good about that. Proverbs 16:9 states, "The heart of a man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps." If you keep running in obedience, wisdom, and boldness, then the Lord will establish your steps. This leads me to my last bit of advice, which is find church and place yourself in a position to soak up wisdom. I'm not talking about the building, I'm talking about the people. Church looks different for pretty much everyone, and most of the time it is in a building. But I'm talking about peers who will influence and encourage you. You're at a very interesting point in your life. You've laid the foundation, and now you're about to build the house. Only you don't know what materials to use or how big you want the house to be yet. Church was so transformative in my life and future career. I remember being a freshman at Hardin-Simmons, and during my first semester, I stepped into a church building maybe once. And for those of you who know Abilene at all, you really have to be trying for that to be the case. There are literally at least 2 churches on every street corner. But I was burned out. I was burned out from being engulfed in a Christian school and a small church and a church-saturated environment. My desire was to break from that. When I started working, I scheduled myself on Sundays for work and didn't desire to seek a church. I remember coming back home for a little while during that first Christmas break, and as I spent time at home, the Lord brought to my attention my character and how distant I was. And after having my eyes opened, I went back to school that second semester to find a church and shore up some areas of my life that were concealed from the Lord. And after a couple weeks, I found a church that I enjoyed and decided to get plugged in. And the transformation in my heart wasn't immediate. It took time for the Lord to remove some of the junk that had been invested in my life. However, the first step was being surrounded by those who would encourage Christ-like behavior in me. Jeremiah 29:11 is a pretty popular verse, and I'm sure that almost all of you probably know it. It states, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a hope and a future." Now that's a pretty sweet verse to read, and a lot of you are probably going to hear that around this point in your life. But it's also a very misused and almost overused verse. Within context, this is actually in the middle of a letter that Jeremiah has written to the exiles being sent out from the Holy Land. And he's speaking to these people merely as an emissary based off of what God has told him. And when he says all of this, these people they're not about to walk into a fruitful life. They're about to go into a land that they don't know for 70 years. And he's simply reminding them of an end goal. Verses 10 through 14 read together say, "For thus says the Lord, when 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will visit you, and I will fulfill you to my promise and bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord. And I will restore your fortunes and gather you from all the nations and all the places I have driven you. And I will bring you back to the place from which I sent you into exile." Graduates, you're all about to go away to a place unbeknownst to you. And let me tell you firsthand, you're about to figure out what kind of relationship that you and God really have. You've been in a great, foundational, instructive environment for a while now, but as Paul says in Philippians, it's time to work out your own salvation. Your relationship with God is no longer dependent on what your parents or teachers will make you do or what they've taught you to believe, but it's on you. How important is God to you? Take these next few years as a time to learn and soak in not just what you can from school, but from Christ. Challenge yourself and ask yourself why you believe what you believe. Invest in people for the sake of Christ, because most of the time, God's going to take you in a direction that you would have never imagined. I went into college a pre-physical therapy major, excited about pursuing a professional career in the medical field, looking at going to doctorate school. But God grabbed a hold of my heart and showed me where he desired me. And if you let him, he'll do the same with you. I do what I do because I truly love to follow the Lord. I just have to be willing to follow him. And let me tell you, if you don't already know, God is worth following. I love reading the perspective of some older theologians, and the Westminster Shorter Catechism is a work written by Scottish and English theologians from the mid-17th century. And there's a quote from it that states, "What is the chief end of man? Man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. When you are enjoying Christ, you are glorifying him. Don't be afraid to make decisions. Pray with the intent of action and seek after Christ-glorifying community." Class of 2015, congratulations. No more dress code.